All right, good day everyone from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. This is Christopher MG, the principal of the Success School. We have a great panel today, radio, television. We have not done one of these before, so let's get started. So here, Brad, you want to give us a little introduction about yourself?
Sure, thank you. I'm Brad Holtz. I'm the Vice President and General Manager of WTTS, WGCL, and Rock 96.1 The Quarry, as well as ST Digital. I live in Indianapolis. I split my time between Indianapolis and Bloomington, where we have offices in both towns. My job is to oversee the overall operations of the radio stations and our digital arm. WTTS serves the greater Indianapolis area and South Central Indiana. WGCL and The Quarry are in Bloomington and focus on Monroe County. And ST Digital is an arm of our division that focuses on the digital needs of our customers. And that is out of both of our offices. And that is what I do.
All right, thank you, Brad. Julie, you want to give an introduction?
I'm Julie Beasley, and I work as the Vice President of Human Resources and Operations with Mid-America Radio Group. I work in Bloomington. I work my time between Bloomington and Martinsville. In Bloomington, we have 97.7 WCLS, we have Spirit 95 and K101 along with MyJoy. And in Martinsville, we work with WCBK, our FM station there as well. My responsibilities in my role, it's kind of a mixture of my experience. And I co-host a local news and events program. So I'm working on the journalist side a little bit, but also work in human resources and people management of our team. We have a staff of about 25, and then also overseeing our operations between our stations in both Martinsville and Bloomington.
Hey, thank you, Julie. Eric?
Hi, I'm Eric Bolstridge. I'm a senior producer director with WTIU. That's the PBS television station here on the campus of Indiana University. My primary role at WTIU is children's programming. I produce a half-hour weekly children's show called The Friday Zone for WTIU that also goes out to the other Indiana PBS stations across the state. There's 8 stations from PBS in Indiana. And I also work a little bit with our news department on our weekly news show, as well as with IU athletics, basketball and football and that sort of thing.
Well, I'll start with you, Eric, and I think it kind of goes for all three of you. You all end up wearing a lot of hats in your job. It's not one specific one. Give me a sense of, Eric, of how you got into sort of the television line and what it took to get you to where you're at, which is a very competitive field.
Sure, absolutely. I think the basics of it is when I was in high school, I watched a lot of television. So it was something that I was already interested in. I also knew that I wanted to do a job and a career that was fun and interesting and creative, had a lot of opportunity for flexibility and to sort of explore different things. And that's definitely what I think media does, because you're telling stories for the most part. And so that you can go out and find those sorts of things. So when I went to college, I went to George Mason University, is where I graduated from, in Virginia. And they had a communications program with a television production specialty. And so that's where I went to school.
Great. Eric, Julia, how about yourself? How did you get into, you're both in HR and on the broadcast side. So give us a little sense of your trajectory to this point.
I would say similar to Eric, my passion for broadcasting and communication started in high school. When I would wrap up with sports at school and high school in the evenings, I would come home and every evening I would watch Tom Brokaw. I was so fascinated with all of the events going on, not only in the United States, but all in the world. But what really drove my passion for journalism and connecting with our communities was when 9/11 hit. I think that had a huge impact on everybody in the United States. And when I was in my history class, I remember my senior year of high school, I was in my history class. It was our math teacher that walked in and informed our history teacher of what was going on. She turned on the TV immediately. That's our form of communication when we're finding out about breaking news. And that really hit me and my passion for connecting with the community, informing people, and making a difference. So there, I ended up graduating from Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and they had an award-winning broadcasting program there. I was learning hands-on everything that I was so passionate about learning and writing for TV. I am currently working in radio, but I started out in TV many, many years ago. I was a local news reporter and producer in markets in Eastern Kentucky and also Evansville, Indiana. But when you look at a career trajectory, my career has not been linear by any means. And I worked in television for many years, was in Evansville working at NBC affiliate. And then life took us a different course. And my husband and I moved to Bloomington in 2008 to start a business. And that's when I jumped into more of a business mindset and got into human resources. I was actually out of broadcasting for 10 years before finding my way to WCLS. I also worked at Indiana University in human resources after starting a business in Bloomington. So I've been able to combine that broadcast experience with human resources. And a lot of people think that you have to have a linear career and stay in the same field your entire life. And I have found that it's just not true. And I would not be where I'm at today if it weren't for all the many experiences that I've had.
Brad, talk to me a little bit about your career. I know you from WTTS. I still call it Earth Radio. And you've been there for a little while. How did you get to your current position and your many hats that you wear, and how big the station's gotten as far as arms, it seems like?
My interest in radio goes back to when I was a youngster, when I was in junior high and high school, and I loved it. And I had an opportunity through a series of fortunate circumstances to get on the radio at a station called WNAP in Indianapolis back when I was in high school. And I continued to do that through college. I went to Indiana. Towards the end of school, I moved over to WTTS and took on a part-time DJ role. I was on the weekends. Thought it'd be something I'd do through college and then go to law school. That was my plan. I was able to kind of move up the ranks a little bit and took an interest in programming and management. And through another series of events and personnel changes, I was able to become the program director when I was 22. I did that, and then over time I added more responsibilities. I took on another radio station, WGCL. In 2015, I launched an alternative rock station in Fort Wayne, where our company has a cluster. And my predecessor retired at the end of 2018. And years prior to that, they identified me as someone who could potentially take over for him upon his retirement. The company sent me to Washington, D.C. for some NAB leadership seminars, and they kind of groomed me over the course of really 4 or 5 years. And my predecessor retired at the end of 2018, and I took over that role at the first of 2019. So it's been a rewarding and exciting career. It's a little boring in that I haven't jumped around a bunch, which is typical for radio people, a lot of jumping around, but I've found a company that I truly love, a place I love. I'm from Indianapolis, I'm from this area. So I didn't have a desire to leave. And so really, it's been the best of both worlds for me, a good company and a stable situation.
How long has it you been then with the parent company then? I think of you as TTS, but how long have you been with that same company?
Well, WTTS has been owned by the parent company, Sarkis Tarzian, for forever, one owner.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's always been in the same family. It went on the air. The call letters went on the air in 1949, I believe it was, WTTS AM, which is now WGCL at 1370. 92.3 went on in 1960 from our current location in Trafalgar, one of the first FM stations in the state. So our founder, Sarkis Tarzian, was really a pioneer in trying new technologies, and to think that at one point FM was a new technology that people were afraid of, and how does this work? And our station took the jump in 1960 to try it. And that's really why we have this grandfathered status and the big signal we have today. It's because we've longevity of the station and what we had done early on. I've personally been on the air at the station for 20 years now, and in management at the station for about 18.
Great. Eric, production of a TV show, which I think it's on it's the Friday show, the Friday Kids show.
Yep. Friday Zone. Yep.
And my wife knows it as the puppet show. What goes into doing a production like that with, I guess you said 7 or 8 other affiliates, PBS affiliates take it. So there's a production quality that goes into this. What is your role in it, and how big an operation is this?
Well, with the Friday Zone, I'm in charge of the show, and so when I'm working on that show, my role is the producer. And a producer is, what I like to tell people is, a producer is really just making lists and then making sure you follow your list. And so it's equipment lists, it is schedules, it is timing things out, it is making sure that you have all of the working parts, all of the personnel, all of the creative stuff that's happening. You have to organize it, right? So you can't just be creative. You also have to be organized, especially when you do have deadlines. You do have content that has to go out. I have to make 26 half hours every year. And I know when those new episodes have to be on the air. And so I have to go backwards from when those episodes are on the air to create them and have them ready to go. Not only with the content side, but the technical side as well, because they have to be, like you said, a certain quality, both with what you see and hear, but also they have to be accurate down to the fraction of a second with how long they are. They have to have closed captioning that's been added to them. They have to be made as a certain type of file, because everything is computers, of course, and pushing those files exactly where they need to go, when they need to go, in the right formats. There's a lot to it. It's mostly organization at the place that I'm at with the Friday Zone, since it is that supervisor organization role.
And so, Eric, how many other roles of that, since you are on the producer hat right now, how many of those other key grip and all those things, when you see the credits in the end, how many of those positions have you sort of taken along the way, or sort of basically could fill in with, is just kind of seeing your arsenal and your toolkit that you have that makes you man of many
Sure.
experiences?
Sure. I mean, going back in time, I graduated from George Mason in 2001. So I've been doing this for 20 years now. When I was at George Mason, we didn't have, I know Julie was saying that she had a great program where she went to school with the field that she was doing. George Mason didn't really have a big, robust television program for students. There was a student television station, and we had some coursework. But my primary experience getting started was as an intern at a local public television station. I started there my junior year, and I was just kind of a production assistant doing whatever I could to help out where I could. Took on more responsibility the next year and became a paid intern, and did everything I could to learn more, to learn about the lights, to learn about the cameras, to learn about the editing software, that sort of thing, audio equipment, all of the equipment that you see in a studio production. When I graduated from George Mason, I was hired as an associate producer part-time. 2 years later, then I was hired as a full-time associate producer, and then my career just continued from there. I was a jack of all trades for a very long time, and that's something that you see a lot when you're working in television. Is you need to be able to shoot, you need to be able to edit, you need to be able to write, you need to be able to get the audio sounding good. In news especially, a lot of times when you see those news reporters out there on TV, standing in front of something saying, this is what's happening right now, they might be there alone, right? They drove the van, they set up the camera, they clipped on their own microphone, they hit the record button and then walk back around in front and do the whole thing, edit it and send it back to the news station. So being able to do everything is really important. And then eventually you do get to specialize at a point in your career, I think, for the most part with television. You can be an expert cameraman, you can be an expert audio engineer, you can be an expert, you can write or direct. I like producing, I like kind of having the big picture. But one of the good things about being a producer, of course, is also whenever you want to, you yourself can step in and fill those other roles, right? So I do every once in a while get to step in and say, you know what, I'm going to shoot this one myself and I'll put the camera back on my shoulder. So it's nice to be the boss that way.
Yeah, I'm sure. Hey, Julie, give us a sense of the competitiveness, and you've done both radio and television, and the drive you need to be successful and what it sort of has taken for you to then get, you stepped out for a little while and then you got back in, and give us a sense on how that environment's changed as well in 15 years or 10 years, I guess, the gap you had.
When you talk about competitiveness, I would say that's very accurate. I remember when I was in high school and deciding this was the path I wanted to take, my dad was very reluctant and said he didn't think it was the right path for me. He said, Julie, it's a dog-eat-dog business, and I just don't want you to have to get involved with that. But I followed my heart anyway. And like I was mentioning, when you're working in TV, you're working as, especially smaller markets, you're working as a one-man band. You're doing everything on your own, from shooting the video, getting the lighting, the audio for whoever your guest is for your interview, setting up the camera. You're doing all of that on your own, on top of driving to wherever you're going. I remember back in the day, we say back in the day, and printing out MapQuest. We didn't have GPS many, many years ago. A lot has changed. But I do remember in those early years when I was a reporter, there was always competition between me and my peers and who was going to get the next anchor role when somebody left, because in smaller markets, there's continually turnover. One of the challenges is retention, because in TV or radio for that matter, when you're getting started in your career, a lot of times you're jumping from market to market and just climbing the ladder. So you stay in one position for a year, year and a half, maybe 2 years before you jump to the next market. So there is a lot of competition. And you have to be careful with that as well, because a lot in any industry, it's all about relationships. And the way I learned to manage that, I think Eric mentioned as well in working internships, when I was a junior at Western Kentucky University, I reached out to the news director at WLKY TV in Louisville. They weren't hiring for an internship, but I ended up working there for a year and a half as an intern. I would drive 2 hours from Bowling Green, Kentucky to Louisville to work 40 hours a week. I would shadow their cameramen, our videographers, and the reporters. I didn't get paid a dime. Nothing. And I was traveling using my own, own gas money. But I put the time and the effort into, I got life experience, and that was completely invaluable. So when you're looking at ways to manage competition, finding ways to learn as much as you can, knowledge is power, but also working through your network. My first job came from a sports anchor at WLKY. He connected with me with somebody in Eastern Kentucky at WYMT. I believe it was Grade Television back then. So it can be difficult, but I think when you help each other, it's always going to be a win. And I think that's my human resources side coming out now too. And that when you collaborate, we're all going to learn more and create a better product in the end as well. But I would say that after I got out of TV and moved to Bloomington to start a business, I did apply for many, many years. I never lost that passion for television or for media or broadcasting. I applied many, many times. Probably I couldn't even count how many applications I had. And after getting out of TV, it was much more difficult to find my way back into broadcasting. But again, a lot of that comes back to networking and relationship building. And that's eventually the way I found my way back into broadcasting.
Great. Now, Julie, what did your father see as your success then? And because he sort of made it right, am I right? If I correct, you're happy with that sort of decision to go this career path?
Yeah, life is funny. And I think the older I get, the more I realize that everything happens for a reason. It was very difficult for me to make the hard decision to get out of broadcasting. And that was back in 2008. But when I was young and getting married, you make the best life decision you can with the information you have. But I would not be where I am today if I didn't have that experience in building a business from the ground up. And learning a lot on the human resources side. I wouldn't be able to function in a management position and be able to help people as much as I possibly can if I didn't have a balance of the broadcasting experience and the human resources and business experience.
Great. Now, Brad, let's go to what you kind of gotten deeper into that business side of radio and how that's changed and the competitiveness of it, the advertising dollars, all of that is your industry. If you want to speak to people interested in getting into radio and that business side they don't see.
Sure. It's certainly more competitive from both the business side and the listenership standpoint. We kind of position ourselves internally as in a battle for attention. We used to be battling other radio stations in our markets, and now we are one of many choices that consumers have for audio entertainment. podcasts, Spotify, SiriusXM, Pandora, other radio stations that are streaming, other radio stations that are in the broadcast area. So there is an infinite amount of options out there for consumers right now. From a business standpoint, there are more options than ever for local businesses to advertise and how they advertise their brands. And so we've developed digital solutions that hopefully can meet the needs that they may have. But we still believe that an effective schedule on the radio or a sufficient schedule on the radio can be very effective for a business to grow. We've seen it again and again. And the reason we still are doing this and still are very successful at it is that we've had a great track record of producing results for local businesses for many, many years. So we believe that we have a great product. We have to get out there and tell more people about it. And we acknowledge that we are one of many, many choices businesses have to advertise right now, other than just other broadcasting entities like television or radio or print, but all the digital solutions that are out there. Direct mail, that is a huge, huge competitor for local advertising dollars. So there's a myriad of choices now, and we just have to be in front of as many people as we can telling our story, which is still a great story.
Wonderful. Well, I can kind of just open this up. What are some of those, if we were talking about your industry, your position, what are some misconceptions people might have that you could kind of set the record straight and anyone can take this?
Well, I wanted to piggyback there on what Brad was saying there. Just like we say radio, but there's all sorts of audio production that is happening now. Television's the same way. We say television. It's not really television anymore. It's video, right? We're just creating video content, right? Netflix is kind of like television, YouTube, TikTok. It's all video. And these content streams are going to continue to grow and evolve and develop. And so it's important to recognize that radio has been around for 70 years on the FM, and television has been around for a really long time. But both traditional broadcast radio and television stations are getting into this stuff too. We are recognizing that we do need to expand, right? PBS does have an app. PBS is on YouTube. PBS does have social media streams on Instagrams and things like that. So I just want to let the students know that when we talk about radio and television, I'm sure some of them are like, I haven't watched television, right? I don't listen to the radio. No, it is still the same thing. It is the same thing.
And that's one thing that's probably in the last 10, 15 years is that line is blurred, right? It's either audio or audio with video. And so look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I like to frame it as we're in a battle for attention right now.
Yes.
We've traditionally talked about share of listening or share of viewing. Really, it's share of mind. We're going for mind share. We want to have a space in your mind, and we want you to think about us and want you to give us some time, because what we've seen in radio over the last 20 years is that time spent listening, which is a key metric in how we measure ourselves against others, but time spent listening has slowly deteriorated. Cumulative audiences, the number of people that are exposed to radio every week, has been very resilient. It's been very strong. And we often hear about how radio reaches 94% of Americans, which it does. But the challenge that we face is that time spent listening. How much time are they giving us? And when there are all these other options out there, it used to be 30 years ago, your in-car audio options were your CD player. So go back 40 years, maybe you had a cassette deck and then the other stations. But now, if you've got this in your car, and who doesn't have this in their car, you can have anything at your fingertips. So we're in a battle for share of mind.
You want to piggyback on that, Julie?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And even working in radio, I can be guilty of that. As you mentioned, Brad, when you have your phone in your car, you listen to any podcast. You connect with your Bluetooth, and I might be listening to something on YouTube. So I think working in radio, I am so much more, sorry, dog barking, so much more conscious of the different when you're thinking of listenership. I remember back in the early 2000s working in a TV newsroom, working as a reporter, producer, anchor. You were not allowed, back then we had MySpace and then Facebook, and you were not allowed to get on social media in the newsroom. And it's interesting to think over 20 years how much things have changed. And social media is right in the mix of everything that we do. When you look at any radio station, any TV station, part of their content and connecting with their listeners and their viewers is through social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram. And I think for me, what has been a struggle and part of why I left the industry for a little bit back in 2008, we hear so much about fake news right now. And I remember back in 2007, 2008, when we were looking at the general election back then, constantly it's breaking news. This is breaking, even though it happened 2 or 3 days ago. It's no longer breaking news unless there's a new development. And today when we're watching the news, whether you're watching CNN or Fox News, CNBC, whatever you choose to watch, our anchors and reporters, our journalists are opinionated. They're not just finding the facts, they're also giving their view and their opinion on things. When I was trained in undergrad, you're completely allowing them to have, you're providing that conduit for them to tell their story. And now journalists are the ones telling the story. And that's where it's been very different, I think, in the time that we're living now. And when you're looking at misconceptions on things, there are journalists out there. Steve Hartman is one of my absolute favorite, and being able to tell a story and let your guest or whoever you're interviewing be able to have that time.
Eric, you do one of your many gigs there. You do the newsroom. How has that sort of changed and evolved in your role, or anything you want to speak to that? Kind of going to Julie's point.
Sure. I'm not in the news department. One of my specialties, something that I have done for a long time, is directing. So being the actual person, behind the counter there in the control room with all the monitors and that sort of thing, and being the one who says, all right, ready camera one and take camera one. That's the director, right? And that's a role that I've always really enjoyed. And so that's one of those things that I've kind of held on to. So I do a lot of directing in addition to producing. And one of those is the weekly news program. So I'm not in the news department making any of those editorial news decisions. I'm on that technical side on the production day itself. It's a half-hour news broadcast that has to be done in a half an hour. It's complicated. We've got all the graphics that are coming up, the pictures that are coming up over the anchor's head, rolling in dozens and dozens of video clips. And again, it's making that list, keeping it organized, and then as the director, calling those shots. So that's more of my role on that news program.
And has that, even on the PBS level, evolved in that it has to be a little bit more graphic oriented, a little bit? Is there anything that's changed as far as whether that's the clips used or anything on that level, or has it stayed pretty consistent? Because we think of our NPR and our PBS as a little bit more dry, but that doesn't mean it doesn't evolve as, a little bit as well, as far as with the viewers.
For sure. Well, and talking about the evolution of content and how much content is out there, there's a ridiculous amount of content out there. I forget the stat, but there's something to the effect of like 1 billion minutes of video uploaded to YouTube every week or something to that effect. There's so much content out there that you have to have the right kind of content. That's why our news department at WTIU has a weekly news program, because that is something special and unique that we can offer. Just like Brad's saying, we're competing for people's attention. And if we're only passing through national news that you can get anywhere, well, that's not a good way of competing. But if we can provide you with news about Bloomington and Terre Haute and Southern Indiana, well, that's special and that's very unique, and that helps us capture some audience. So that's the priority that we have with a news department. We have one of the larger news departments for a local PBS station, because that's our way of, one of many ways that we can compete for people's attention.
Right. And kind of going down to sort of reaching people, let's talk about some of the community events or some outreach that you do. Brad, how do you, in order to get into the minds of your listeners and to get them sort of feeling that you're part of their life and their community, what have you done in your role, and I know you've done some great, the Rock to Read ones come to mind. What are some of those type of things that you've done, and sort of your outlook on that community aspect of your role?
I think it's the most critical thing that we can do to fulfill our mission as local broadcasters and to remain, I think, relevant in the minds of local audiences, and why we're different and why we bring something unique to the table over Pandora or Spotify or a podcast that was produced in Vancouver. Those are great. And I, I'm a podcast listener. I listen to a lot of audio. But when a local radio station can do a Toys for Tots drive or do something for children's reading, and that money stays in the community, that's so powerful. And to be able to tell that story, just quick story, we obviously can't do any sort of concerts this year because of the pandemic. And Rock to Read's been just a wonderful series that has supported the Indianapolis Public Library for many years. Also, the Monroe County Public Library has been a beneficiary for some shows we've done in Bloomington. And those are all dark this year, but we are running an awareness campaign on WTTS. Our 10-year presenting sponsor of Rock to Read came in to support this campaign, to underwrite it, even without shows. So that shows you how powerful the message has been about children's literacy. We've done the same thing with the Indiana Children's Wish Fund with our Rock on the River summer benefit. That's now moved to a drive-in. We're doing drive-in movies, musical movie double features at a drive-in in Indy right now to support the Children's Wish Fund. So we have a lot of really great initiatives that we believe enrich Bloomington and Indianapolis, and that really is what it's all about. And we're proud of the record, and the other stations in our company. We have a couple of television stations too, and they're very serious about giving back and doing these types of things. And it is what separates us from a Pandora, or from, I guess, on the TV side, from any other content provider you can get on your phone or on your Roku stick or anywhere.
And Julie or Eric, if you want to go to that community aspect, you can talk about that as well.
Well, WTIU, and we also have a radio station here on campus, WFIU, the NPR radio station. It's in the same building. There's a lot of crosswork. Events are incredibly important when you're trying to identify yourself as a part of the community. That's part of that capturing the hearts and minds of the audience, is getting them to understand that you are a part of the community. So we do dozens of events every year. And just like Brad's saying, it's because we want to be a member of this community and we want our audience to think of us that way.
And to jump off that, I would say our listeners and our community, that's the reason why we are on the air. And I think jumping in and planning these events for the community is what connects them with our different stations. We recently did a food drive. We partnered with Meineke and held a food drive for Hoosier Hills Food Bank. They've been struggling this year because they aren't able to hold the normal events that they can with COVID-19. We also did a food drive in Martinsville with Churches with Mission, and we'll also be doing a coat drive as well for the winter months for families in need in our areas. And I think that's part of why I do what I do and so many in our company do, because through our medium, through radio, we're able to make a difference and connect with our listeners. And that's why they continue to tune in. We have, at the same time, we also have companies, we have advertisers who are reaching out on events because they want to get started on Coats with Kids or different events that we're holding, because they want to make a difference and connect with our listeners as well. And that helps us on the business side when you're looking at revenue, and that we have partners with companies and businesses in the community who want to work on these projects with us.
Great. I know that's the reason that sort of intimacy you only get from a local broadcaster, right? I mean, you don't get that from the Vancouver podcast. We're kind of wrapping up. I know we've had talks about certain topics, but let's give some insight that our audience might want to hear that we have not talked about. Julie, you're on my screen. Is there anything that, I know I give you guys a list of questions, anything we haven't covered that you want to bring up or talk about your own career?
I would say for any high schoolers who are interested in getting into broadcasting or into this field, follow your heart, number one. Two, learn as much as you can. When I was in college, as a sophomore and as a junior and a senior, I participated in RTNDA, it's RTDNA now, the Television Digital News Directors Association, SPJ, the Society of Professional Journalists. Find those organizations. Those are resources where you can learn and get ahead of the game and ahead of your peers as well. And learning a lot of that information, learning industry trends, as well as networking. I did a job shadow my freshman year of college. You usually can't get an internship in television or radio until your junior year of college. Reach out to somebody that you admire for a mentor. Have a book of mentors that you can reach out to that can help guide you in your career as well. For me, I think that's been the game changer for me, in having people on my side who are also advocating for me. I can apply for so many positions, but a lot of times if you don't know somebody or have that inner network to make that connection, you may not really have a shot at the position. I would say every job I have had since I graduated from college has been through somebody that I knew. So work hard and make that known as well.
Network.
Yeah, well, it's so very important too, because you can't just, and I know I'm working at Indiana University, I have a lot of students come through. I have student interns of my own, and I see a lot of students that will go to school, get their degree, and then wonder why they're not getting hired. They think that just because they went through the program and they have a degree and they think they know it, they should get found or discovered somehow. And that's just not the way that it works. You have to show up. You have to find stuff. You have to be very reliable when you do find stuff. Like Julie was saying, if you can show that you're willing to drive to an internship and you show up on time every day and you're reliable early in your career, that's the most important thing, right? Is showing up and being reliable with that sort of stuff. And if you're interested in the content side, there's absolutely no reason why you can't start proving yourself right now with content. I mean, everybody, like we said, the phones aren't only a way of consuming media, they're a way of creating media. So you can be making stuff right now and you can be publishing stuff right now, and it can be quality. And then when it comes time to show that you do know how to make content, you'll have content that you've already created going into those situations just on your phone. Just do a podcast, do an internet radio show, make those Instagram videos. It all counts. It's all content.
Yeah, and I think what I'd say is, and I agree with what Eric and Julie have said here, there's some great points, and this has been a really fun panel here. I would tell people that are thinking about this type of career, any career really, be a good writer, be a good speaker, be able to tell a story. My concern with social media and all the distractions and where we are now is we're going to just not be able to write and speak. And that's so critical in our businesses. We're communicators, we're in that business. And I think it goes back to telling a really compelling story and be interesting and be compelling. And you know that the news today is that Quibi is folding, which is the site that was offering short pieces of content, 5-10 minute shorts. And that was Jeffrey Katzenberg. He's about as big as it gets in Hollywood. They had $1.8 billion in funding. It didn't last 6 months. You know, we've been around. This is radio's 100th anniversary this year, and television's been around for 70 some odd years, 80 years. And tell a story, put time and attention into your craft. And when you're getting into it, I couldn't agree more. Show up, be present, be there, and learn as much as you can about every part of a station or about an operation you're in. The more you're willing to learn, hungry to learn, bosses will take notice of that. Don't be absent. Don't be missing. Be there, be present, learn, and be able to write and speak, conduct a conversation, and focus. And those are just some of the little things that I think we have to really talk about now, because I'm just afraid at what every new social media site, as more of them proliferate, what they're doing to our collective attention. So focus on the basics, and I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, go after it for sure. In my career, whether it was getting a job or getting a promotion or moving into a new field at my job that I wanted to, I've never had a boss come to me and say, hey, we've noticed you and we want you to do this now. It's always been the initiative of asking for it and going to get. that next thing that I wanted. So you do have to show up. You have to ask for it, and you have to want it, because people aren't. There's so many of you out there. Here at IU, I tell these students when they graduate from the media school, they're graduating with hundreds and hundreds of other people from this school with exactly the same resume. So you've got to stand out and you've got to ask for it.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Brad. It was a fun talk on this subject, and we'll see everybody at the Success School next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.